Palmetto Farm stretched out like a well-kept secret on the outskirts of South Mill Creek. Among the eucalyptus plantations that danced with the Virginia wind, Anthony Bernard's property was known to everyone, but few truly knew it. The windows of the main house remained closed even on the sunniest days, as if they guarded stories that couldn't see the light of day. Stella walked along the inner porch, her bare feet making the slightest noise on the hardwood planks. At 22, she possessed a melancholic beauty that contrasted with the isolation in which she lived. Her brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and her green eyes carried an inexplicable sadness for someone so young. "Stella, you can't just stand there all day," said Anthony, appearing in the doorway. At 55, he maintained the erect posture and penetrating gaze that intimidated everyone in town. "Mrs. Martha prepared your favorite lunch." "I'm not hungry, Uncle Anthony," she murmured, without taking her eyes from the landscape visible through the window slats. "You're never hungry, girl. You seem to be withering away in here." Stella turned slowly. There was something in her gaze that Anthony couldn't decipher, a restlessness that grew with each passing day. "Why can't I leave the farm? Why can't I go to town like other girls? My age." Anthony sighed, the same conversation that had been repeating for years. "You know very well the reason, Stella. Your health has always been fragile. The doctor recommended that you rest away from excitement. Here you're safe." "Safe from what?" The question came out with more force than she intended. The silence that followed was as dense as the stifling air of the house. Anthony approached and placed his hand on his niece's shoulder, a gesture that might have been affectionate if it weren't so controlling. "Safe from a world that wouldn't understand you, my child. You're too special for this small town." Stella moved away gently. Those words which had once consoled her now sounded like a gilded prison. She had fragmented memories of a different childhood, flashes of a blonde woman who sang lullabies, of a man who put her on his shoulders to reach the stars. But whenever she tried to ask about her parents, Anthony changed the subject with the skill of someone who had practiced the art of evasion for years. "The people from the State Department are coming tomorrow," he said, abruptly changing the subject. "They're going to inspect the horses. You need to stay in your room during the visit." "Why? I love horses. Maybe I could help." "No, Stella. It's better if you don't appear." The firmness in Anthony's voice left no room for arguments, but it also awakened something new in Stella, curiosity about what he so feared she might discover. That night, while Anthony checked the farm documents, in his office Stella approached the window of her room. The full moon illuminated the pastures, where the horses grazed peacefully. She pressed her face against the glass, feeling the cold surface against her skin. Something inside her screamed for freedom, for answers, for a life that always seemed beyond her reach. Without knowing it, she was about to discover that her entire life had been built on a secret that would change everything she believed she knew about herself, and that the key to this discovery would arrive the next day, along with an inspection team and a retired dog that saw beyond appearances. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. The sun was still struggling against the morning clouds when the State Department pickup truck entered the gate of Palmetto Farm. Stella observed through the gap in the curtain, disobeying Anthony's orders to stay away from the windows. 3 people got out of the vehicle, 2 men in uniform and a woman with her hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Dr. Bernard," shouted the oldest of the inspectors, extending his hand. "I'm Coordinator Mark Oliver. This is Veterinarian Claire Sanders, and this is my assistant Joe." Anthony smiled with his usual rehearsed cordiality, but Stella noticed the tension in his shoulders. She knew each of her uncle's gestures, every micro-expression he deemed imperceptible. "Welcome all of you. Feel free to inspect whatever you wish. My farm has always been an example of animal care." It was then that Stella saw something that made her catch her breath. From the back of the truck, a dog jumped out with the elegance of one who had known better days. Argus was a German shepherd with fur darkened by time, with scars that told stories of a lifetime dedicated to work. His amber eyes were intelligent and observant, and there was something in them that deeply touched Stella's heart. "This is Argus," explained Claire, stroking the animal's head. "He's retired from rescue service, but still accompanies us on inspections. He has an exceptional instinct for detecting peculiar situations." Anthony observed the dog with an expression that Stella couldn't interpret. Was it fear? Discomfort? "A beautiful animal," he commented, maintaining a respectful distance. "I imagine he has many stories to tell." As the group headed toward the stables, Argus stopped abruptly. His head turned toward the house, and for a moment that seemed eternal, his eyes fixed exactly on the window where Stella was hiding. She felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as if the dog could see her through the curtains, through the walls, through all the secrets that surrounded her. "Argus, come," called Mark, but the dog remained motionless. "Is he sensing some strange smell?" asked Anthony, in a tone too casual to be natural. "I couldn't say," replied Claire, frowning. "Argus rarely acts like this without reason." The dog finally moved, but not toward the stables. He walked slowly to the house porch and lay down in front of the main door, like a silent guardian. His eyes remained fixed on the second-floor window. Stella moved away from the curtain, her heart beating rapidly. There was something in that gaze that awakened dormant memories, sensations she couldn't name. It was as if Argus were a missing link to a past she couldn't reach. "What a strange dog," Anthony muttered to himself, observing the animal from his office window. The inspection of the stables proceeded normally. The horses were well cared. For the facilities impeccable, all documentation in order. But Argus didn't leave the porch. Even when Claire called him for the lunch that Anthony offered, the dog merely wagged his tail politely and remained at his post. "It's the first time I've seen Argus behave like this," commented Claire, concerned. "He seems to be guarding something." "Guarding what?" asked Anthony, serving cold lemonade. "I have no idea, but he has reasons for everything he does." During lunch, Stella observed from the kitchen window. Argus was still there, patient and vigilant. From time to time he raised his head and sniffed the air, as if catching something that others couldn't perceive. "Miss Claire," said Joe, the younger assistant, "wouldn't it be better if we took Argus to look inside the house too? Maybe he's detected some problem we can't see." The silence that followed was tense. Anthony swallowed hard, and Stella noticed that his hands trembled slightly as he held his glass. "I don't think that's necessary," he said, forcing a smile. "The house has nothing to do with horse breeding." "Of course, Dr. Bernard," Mark quickly agreed. "Sorry for the suggestion." But Claire didn't seem convinced. She observed Argus with growing attention, and Stella had the impression that the veterinarian was beginning to suspect that there was more to Palmetto Farm than met the eye. The State Department team had left 2 hours ago, but Argus remained on the porch as if he had found his true destiny. Claire had tried to take him away 3 times, but the dog simply refused to leave. In the end, she decided to leave him temporarily in the care of the farm. "I've never seen anything like it," she said, scratching her head as she observed the animal. "It's as if he knows something that we don't." Anthony nodded with forced cordiality. "You can leave him here for a few days. Maybe he just needs time to get used to the environment." "Thank you, Dr. Bernard. I'll be back tomorrow to get him." As soon as the sound of the truck was lost in the distance, Anthony entered the house, slamming the door with more force than necessary. Stella heard his heavy footsteps in the hallway, followed by the sound of drawers being opened and closed. "In his office? Damn dog," he muttered, nervously leafing through papers. Just now a sniffer animal had to appear. Stella descended the stairs silently. For the first time in years, she felt an inexplicable courage growing in her chest. Maybe it was the presence of that dog, or maybe it was the certainty that finally something was about to change in her life. The house was immersed in the silence of the afternoon. Anthony had locked himself in his office, probably making calls. She could hear the murmur of his voice through the closed door. Stella approached the living room window and observed Argus. The dog was lying down but alert, with erect ears and eyes fixed on the house. Making an impulsive decision, she opened the front door. The sound made Argus rise immediately. Their eyes met, and Stella felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, a true connection with another living being. The dog didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't show any sign of aggression. He just observed her with an intensity that seemed to penetrate her soul. "Hi," she whispered, taking a shy step toward him. "You're not going away, are you?" Argus tilted his head as if understanding every word. Stella approached more, slowly extending her hand. When her fingers touched the animal's rough fur, she felt an inexplicable wave of emotion. It was as if a lost part of herself had been found. "You know me, don't you?" she murmured, caressing the dog's muzzle. "I don't know why, but I feel like we've met before." Argus moved closer, resting his head on Stella's leg. The simple gesture brought tears to her eyes. It had been so long since she had felt genuine affection, contact without ulterior motives or control. "Do you feel what I feel?" she asked, sitting on the porch beside the dog. "That there's something wrong here, that there are too many secrets in this house?" In response, Argus stood up and walked to one of the side windows of the house. It was a small window that led to a room that Stella knew was always locked. Anthony said it was just a storage room for old objects, but she had always been curious about what was really in there. The dog sniffed at the base of the window and began to gently scratch the ground with his front paws. Stella approached and saw that there was something buried there, a small metal can corroded by time. "What did you find?" she whispered, carefully digging with her hands. The can was full of old photographs and yellowed documents. The first photos showed a blonde woman smiling at the camera, holding a baby in her arms. The woman had the same green eyes as Stella, the same face shape. Stella examined the photos with her heart racing. "Who is this woman?" she murmured to herself. More photos revealed the same woman at different moments, playing with a small child. In the garden, celebrating a birthday, embracing a dark-haired man who was definitely not Anthony. And on the back of one of the photos, an inscription in delicate handwriting, "Stella and Mommy 3 years old." Stella's hands trembled. That woman was her mother. But how was this possible? Anthony had always told her that her mother had died when she was a baby, and that he was her only living relative. Argus approached again as if wanting to comfort her. She hugged the dog, trying to process the devastating discovery. "Uncle Anthony lied to me," she whispered, her voice choked. "He lied about everything." From inside the house, she heard the office door opening and Anthony's footsteps approaching. Quickly, she tucked the photos in her pocket and pretended to be just playing with Argus. "Stella, what are you doing out?" "Her there?" His voice carried a barely disguised irritation. "Just getting to know the dog," she replied, trying to sound natural. Anthony observed the scene with suspicion, his eyes fixing on the spot where she had dug. "Come inside immediately." "You know you shouldn't be exposed to the sun." She obeyed, but not without exchanging one last look with Argus. The dog seemed to understand that something had changed, that a fundamental truth had been revealed, and that, from that moment on, nothing would be the same at Palmetto Farm. Stella spent the night wide awake, analyzing each photograph she had found. The moonlight that entered through the gap in the curtain illuminated the face of the woman who was, without doubt, her mother. The similarities were undeniable. The same expressive green eyes, the same delicate chin shape, even the way of smiling was identical. In one of the photos, she saw something that made her catch her breath. In the background of the image, partially visible, was the facade of a house she immediately recognized. It was the old Morell residence, a family that had left South Mill Creek more than 15 years ago. Stella vaguely remembered hearing comments about how they had departed from the town suddenly, selling everything in a hurry. Could Mom have lived there? She whispered to herself, examining every detail of the photograph. A noise in the hallway made her quickly hide the photos under her pillow. The door opened slowly, and Anthony's silhouette appeared against the corridor light. "Stella, are you awake?" "I couldn't sleep," she replied, trying to keep her voice casual. "The wind is very strong tonight." Anthony approached the bed, and she noticed he was carrying a cup of tea. "I brought you some chamomile. It will help you relax." "Thank you, Uncle Anthony," she said, accepting the cup, but not drinking. He sat on the edge of the bed, a gesture that once consoled her but now made her uncomfortable. "You seem different today, Stella. Did something happen?" "Different how?" "I don't know, more restless. Maybe it's the presence of that dog. Animals can make sensitive people agitated." Stella observed him carefully. There was something in Anthony's eyes that she had never noticed before, a constant vigilance, as if he were always evaluating her reactions. "Uncle Anthony, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, my child. Why have you never shown me photos of my mother?" The silence that followed was too long. Stella saw Anthony's jaw tighten, a sign of tension she had learned to recognize over the years. "We've talked about this, Stella. Painful. Memories are better forgotten. Your mother, she didn't have an easy life. I prefer to protect you from those sorrows. But I have the right to know my own history, don't I?" Anthony stood up abruptly. "You're 22, Stella, but your mind has always been fragile. There are things it's better not to know. Trust me as you always have. And what if I don't want to blindly trust anymore?" The question came out with a firmness that surprised them both. Anthony stared at her with an expression she had never seen before, a mixture of surprise and something that looked very much like fear. "Drink your tea and sleep, Stella. Tomorrow you'll feel better." He left the room, closing the door with more force than necessary. Stella heard the sound of a key turning in the lock, something that had never happened before. Her heart raced. Why had he locked her in? She approached the window and saw Argus still on the porch, now lying down but with alert ears. It was as if the dog knew that something had changed in the dynamics of the house. The next morning, Stella awoke with a slight discomfort. The cup of tea sat untouched on the bedside table, but she felt strangely drowsy. She tried to open the door and discovered it was still locked. "Uncle Anthony!" she shouted, knocking on the door. "Why am I locked in?" It took a few minutes before she heard his footsteps in the hallway. "Good morning, Stella. How are you feeling?" "Why? Is the door locked? You had an episode during the night. You were delirious, saying things that made no sense. I locked it for your own safety." Stella frowned. She didn't remember any episode. In fact, she didn't remember having had an episode in years. "I don't remember any of that." "The episodes leave you confused, you know that. The doctor warned me this could happen more frequently." When the door finally opened, Stella saw that Anthony wasn't alone. Beside him was a middle-aged man she didn't recognize, wearing a white coat. "This is Dr. Henry Vance, a specialist in neurological disorders. He came specifically to evaluate your case." The doctor approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hello, Stella. Your uncle told me about your episodes of mental confusion. We're going to do some tests to see how we can help you." "I don't need help," she said, instinctively backing away. "I feel fine. People with your type of condition don't always realize when they're having episodes," explained the doctor, opening a case full of medications. "But don't worry, we have very effective treatments." Stella looked out the window and saw Argus getting up, as if sensing something was wrong. The dog began to bark for the first time since arriving at the farm, a low but insistent bark, like a warning. "That dog is disturbing my niece," Anthony said to the doctor. "Perhaps we should start the treatment immediately." It was at that moment that Stella understood the gravity of her situation. The photos, the lies, the locked door, the unknown doctor. Everything was part of a plan to keep her under control. And the only witness to the truth was out there, desperately barking to alert anyone who might hear. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. Argus's barks echoed across the property like an urgent alarm. Stella backed up to the window, her heart beating erratically as she watched the doctor prepare a syringe with a transparent liquid. "I'm not taking any medication," she said, trying to keep her voice firm. "I don't need treatment." "Stella, be reasonable," said Anthony, approaching with his hands extended in a gesture meant to be reassuring. "It's for your own good." "My own good?" she laughed bitterly. "How is lying about my mother for my own good?" Anthony's face paled. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the photos, Uncle Anthony. Or should I just call you Anthony, because clearly you're not who you say you are?" Dr. Vance exchanged a significant look with Anthony. "The delusions are worse than you told me," he murmured. "She's creating elaborate fantasies." "They're not fantasies," cried Stella, taking the photographs from her pocket and spreading them on the bed. "Explain this, then." The silence that followed was deafening. Anthony looked at the photos as if he'd seen a ghost, and his hands began to visibly tremble. "Where did you find these?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Argus showed me where you hid them. He knew, didn't he? He knew you were lying." Outside, the dog's barks intensified, and Stella heard the sound of a car approaching. Through the window, she saw Claire getting out of a small pickup truck. "The veterinarian is back," she said, feeling a wave of hope. Anthony quickly moved to the window and then turned to the doctor. "Do something. Quickly." Dr. Vance approached Stella with the syringe, but she was faster. She grabbed the flower vase from the bedside table and threw it against the window, shattering the glass. The noise was loud enough to alert Claire, who was trying to calm Argus. "In the yard." "Help!" shouted Stella through the broken window. "Help me!" Claire looked up, saw Stella at the window, and immediately realized something was very wrong. "Stella, are you okay?" "No, they want to forcibly medicate me. I found photos of my mother. Uncle Anthony lied about everything." Anthony pulled Stella away from the window, but the damage was already done. Claire was running toward the house, and Argus was accompanying her, barking even louder. "You don't understand," said Anthony, his mask of cordiality finally falling. "I did all this to protect you. Your mother, she wasn't a good person, Stella. She abandoned you when you were little." "Lies, the photos show a woman who loved me." "Your mother was a drug addict. She left you with me and disappeared. I raised you, gave you everything." "Then why lie? Why say that she had passed away when I was a baby?" Anthony hesitated, and Stella saw something in his eyes that made her understand a terrible truth. "You know where she is, don't you? She didn't die. She didn't abandon me. You separated me from her." The bedroom door opened violently, and Claire entered with Argus at her side. The dog immediately positioned himself between Stella and the two men, growling softly. "What's going on here?" asked Claire, observing the scene with professional attention. "Nothing, that's your business," said Anthony, trying to regain his composure. "My niece is having a psychotic episode. Dr. Vance is just trying to help her." Claire looked at Stella, then at the photos spread on the bed, and finally at Argus, who continued in a defensive position. "Argus doesn't usually react like this without reason," she said slowly. "Stella, can you tell me what's happening?" "He lied about my mother. These photos prove that she loved me, that we lived together, but he always told me that she wasn't here anymore when I was a baby." Claire examined the photographs carefully. "These photos are recent. This girl is at least 3 years old in this photo, not a baby." "Exactly," said Stella, tears running down her face. "He lied about everything, and now he wants to medicate me to stop me from asking questions." Dr. Vance tried to approach again with the syringe, but Argus intervened, showing his teeth. "I wouldn't recommend that," Claire said coldly. "Argus has attacked people who posed a threat to vulnerable children before." "This is not a normal situation," protested Anthony. "Stella needs medical help." "Then let's take her to the public hospital, where she can be evaluated by an independent medical team," suggested Claire. "And maybe we should also call Child Services to clarify these questions about her mother." The panic in Anthony's eyes was visible. "That's not necessary. I can take care of her." "Mr. Bernard," said Claire, her voice taking on an official tone, "I am obligated by law to report suspicious situations involving vulnerable individuals, and Argus's behavior, combined with these photographs and Stella's accounts, constitute sufficient evidence for an investigation." Stella looked at Argus, who watched her with his wise and protective eyes. The dog had done more than find buried photos. He had found the truth she needed to begin rebuilding her life. "Thank you," she whispered to the dog, caressing his head. "Thank you for showing me that I wasn't crazy." The arrival of the sheriff's department an hour later transformed the atmosphere of Palmetto Farm. Claire had kept her word and contacted the proper authorities. Stella watched from the living room window as two investigators talked with Anthony in the yard, their voices low but clearly tense. "Don't be afraid," said Claire, sitting beside her. "Argus won't leave your side until this is resolved." The dog, as if understanding, lay at Stella's feet but kept his eyes fixed on the door, vigilant. "Claire, do you really think he kept me here against my mother's will all these years?" "I can't say anything for certain yet, but the evidence is concerning, especially the fact that you've been isolated from society, without contact with other people your age, without regular schooling. He always said it was because of my fragile health. You seem perfectly healthy to me, and Argus has an infallible instinct for detecting situations of emotional or psychological abuse." The door opened, and investigator Rebecca Stewart entered, followed by Anthony, who seemed to have aged 10 years in one morning. "Stella, I'd like to speak with you privately," said the investigator. "Your uncle has told us his version of events, but we need to hear yours as well." Anthony tried to intervene. "She's not in a condition to—" "Mr. Bernard," the investigator interrupted, "I'll ask you to wait outside, and don't leave the property." When they were alone, Rebecca approached Stella gently. "Can you tell me about your mother? What do you remember of her?" "I remember—" Stella closed her eyes, concentrating. "I remember a woman singing lullabies. She smelled like jasmine and had soft hands. We played in the garden and she took me to feed the birds every morning." "How old were you when these memories stop?" "I think about 4 or 5 years old. Suddenly she wasn't there anymore, and Uncle Anthony told me that she couldn't take care of me anymore." Rebecca showed the photographs that Claire had collected. "Your uncle claims that your mother was addicted to drugs and that she came to him asking him to take you. But these photos don't show signs of addiction. They show a healthy woman happy with her daughter. So he lied about that too." "Stella, I need you to be very brave now. We're going to make some calls and investigate the official records. If your mother is still alive, if she's been looking for you all these years—" Stella's heart stopped. She could be alive? It's a possibility we can't rule out," Claire approached. "Rebecca, I found something that might interest you. Argus led me to the back of the property, where there's a small abandoned cabin. Inside, we found more photographs and some letters." The investigator examined the letters with growing attention. "These letters are addressed to Stella. They're from her mother, dated from the last 5 years. 5 years? Stella took one of the letters with trembling hands. "She was writing to me and I never knew?" "My dear Stella," Rebecca read aloud. "Today you turn 18. I'm still trying to find a way to reach you. Anthony continues to refuse to let me see you, but I will never give up. Every day I come to the edge of the farm and look toward the house, hoping to catch a glimpse of you." Tears ran down Stella's face. She didn't abandon me, she was trying to find me. "There's more," continued Rebecca. "I'm working with a lawyer now. We discovered that Anthony never had legal custody of you. When I was hospitalized after the car accident, he simply took you away. I spent months looking for you." "Car accident?" Stella vaguely remembered a time when there was much crying and confusion in the house. "Your mother didn't abandon you, Stella. She had a serious car accident when you were 5 and was hospitalized for months. Anthony took advantage of that situation to bring you here, claiming he was taking care of you temporarily. But why did he do that?" Claire and Rebecca exchanged glances. "There's something else you need to know," said Rebecca gently. "Your real name isn't Stella Bernard, it's Stella Morell. Your mother is Elizabeth Morell, and your maternal family owns several properties in this region. Very valuable land." "Land? But what land?" "Including a large part of the property that today officially belongs to Anthony. He obtained the transfer documents while your mother was hospitalized, and you were under his illegal care." Stella felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Everything began to make sense. The isolation, the lies, the constant control. "He stole me from my mother to get the family's land. That's what everything indicates, and now that you're of legal age, technically you have the right to claim that inheritance. That's why he was trying to declare you mentally incompetent." Argus approached and placed his head in Stella's lap, as if sensing her emotional distress. "Where is my mother now?" she asked, stroking the dog. Rebecca smiled for the first time. "Stella, your mother is on her way. She received our call an hour ago. Elizabeth Morel never stopped looking for her daughter, and tomorrow you two will finally be reunited." For the first time in years, Stella felt a true hope growing in her chest. Argus had done more than find buried photographs. He had found her lost family. Dawn at Palmetto Farm brought with it a completely different atmosphere. Stella had spent the night at Claire's house in town, where she slept deeply for the first time in years. Argus never left her bedside like a silent guardian protecting her dreams. "She should be arriving soon," said Claire, looking out the living room window. "It's almost 9 o'clock. Stella felt her heart beating so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Her hands trembled as she smoothed the simple dress Claire had lent her. She wanted to look nice for the reunion with the mother she hadn't seen in 17 years. "What if she doesn't recognize me?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "What if I'm not what she expected me to be?" "Darling," said Claire, holding her hands, "a mother always recognizes her daughter. Love doesn't forget." Argus suddenly stood up, his ears alert. He walked to the door and began to wag his tail, behavior completely different from his defensive posture of the last few days. "He senses something," murmured Stella. The sound of a car approaching made everyone head to the porch. A blue sedan stopped in front of the house, and Stella saw a woman slowly get out from the passenger side. It was like looking at a more mature version of herself. Elizabeth Morel had aged gracefully, but her green eyes maintained the same sweet and loving expression from the photographs. Her blonde hair was shorter now with some silver strands, and she wore a floral dress that highlighted her natural elegance. Mother and daughter looked at each other across the distance of the garden, and time seemed to stand still. 17 years of longing, tears, and searching crystallized in that unique moment. "Stella." Elizabeth's voice was just a whisper, but it carried so much love that it broke all the barriers that time had built. "Mom," replied Stella, and the word came out naturally, as if it had been spoken yesterday for the last time. They ran toward each other, and when they embraced, it was as if the world finally returned to its proper place. Elizabeth held her daughter's face between her hands, examining every detail as if wanting to memorize everything again. "My girl, my beautiful girl," she repeated, tears flowing freely down her face. "I never stopped looking for you. Not a single day did I stop thinking about you." "I missed you too, even without really knowing why," said Stella, hugging her mother as if wanting to recover all the lost hugs. There was an emptiness inside me that I couldn't explain. "I'm sorry, my love. I'm sorry for not reaching you sooner. I tried so many times." "It wasn't your fault, Mom. I know everything now." Elizabeth looked at Claire and Rebecca, who were watching the scene with moist eyes. "How can I thank you? You've given me back my daughter." "Actually," said Claire, stroking Argus, "it was this boy here who discovered the truth. He always knew something was wrong." Elizabeth knelt before the dog, who watched her with interest. "Thank you," she said, caressing his head. "Thank you for protecting my daughter when I couldn't." As if understanding the importance of that moment, Argus approached both of them and lay at their feet, creating a symbolic circle of protection and union. "Mum, tell me about the accident. I vaguely remember you going to the hospital." Elizabeth sighed, still holding her daughter's hand as if afraid she might disappear again. "It was a serious car accident. I was returning from town when a truck lost control. I was in a coma for 3 months, and when I woke up, you had disappeared. Anthony told me that social services had taken you to a foster family." He lied. "I spent years searching through adoption records. I hired private detectives, put up posters, offered rewards. I never imagined that you were here so close all the time." "Why do you think he did this?" Elizabeth hesitated, looking at her daughter with affection. "The lands of our family were always coveted. After the accident, Anthony managed to forge documents claiming that I had died and that he was your legal guardian. With that, he gained control over the entire inheritance that would be yours when you turned 18. And now?" Now we're going to recover everything that is ours, but mainly we're going to recover lost time." Stella smiled through her tears. "I dreamed of this moment without even knowing I was dreaming. Sometimes at night I would hear a voice singing lullabies and I thought it was my imagination. I also sang to you every night looking toward the farm. My heart always knew you were alive somewhere." Rebecca approached discreetly. "Elizabeth, we need to resolve some legal issues, but I can tell you that Anthony will be prosecuted for kidnapping, document forgery, and misappropriation. He won't be able to prevent you from recovering your normal life." "How long will it take?" asked Stella. "The criminal proceedings may take time, but the inheritance issue should be resolved quickly. We have all the necessary evidence." Elizabeth embraced her daughter again. "It doesn't matter how long it takes. What matters is that we're together again, and this time no one is going to separate us." Argus stood up and wagged his tail, as if knowing that his most important mission had been accomplished. He had found more than buried evidence. He had reunited a family and restored the love that should never have been interrupted. "Let's go home, my daughter," said Elizabeth, intertwining her fingers with Stella's. "Let's go to our true home." 3 months later, Palmetto Farm had been completely transformed. The windows of the main house were open, allowing the golden light of the Virginian autumn to illuminate every room. The garden, previously neglected, was flourishing under the loving care of Stella and Elizabeth, who spent their mornings planting roses and tending to jasmine seedlings. Stella was on the porch, watching Argus play with the colts in the pasture. The dog had decided to stay permanently at the farm, refusing to leave even when Claire offered to take him back to town. It was as if he knew that his place was here, protecting the family he had helped reunite. "What are you thinking about?" asked Elizabeth, approaching with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "About how everything changed so quickly," replied Stella, accepting the cup with gratitude. 3 months ago, I didn't even know who I really was." "And now?" Stella smiled, and it was a completely different smile from those sad, restrained ones of her isolation days. "Now I know that I am Stella Morell, daughter of Elizabeth Morell, legitimate heir to these lands, and most importantly, a young woman who has a whole life ahead to make up for lost time." The judicial process had been resolved with surprising speed. The documents forged by Anthony were easily contested, and all properties returned to Elizabeth and Stella. Anthony had been sentenced to 5 years in prison and the payment of substantial compensation for the damages caused. "Have you heard any news about him?" asked Stella, referring to the man she had called uncle for years. "Rebecca told me he's serving his sentence in Richmond. Apparently he's cooperating with other investigations about falsification of rural documents. Sometimes I almost feel sorry for him." Elizabeth looked at her daughter with admiration. "You have a very generous heart, my daughter. But remember, he stole 17 years of our life together." "I know, but I also know that holding grudges would only hurt me more. I prefer to focus on the future." A familiar car coming up the road caught the attention of both. It was Claire, who had become a close friend of the family, visiting them at least twice a week. "Hello, ladies," she shouted, getting out of the car. "I brought news." Argus ran to greet her, wagging his tail happily. "What kind of news?" asked Stella, curious. "The State University of Virginia has approved your application. You can start your veterinary course next semester." Stella screamed with joy and hugged her mother. She had always dreamed of working with animals, but never imagined it would be possible. "And there's more," continued Claire. "They were so impressed with your story that they offered a full scholarship. Your essay about how Argus changed your life deeply touched the evaluators." Elizabeth had tears in her eyes. "I'm so proud of you, my daughter. Mom, what if I live in town during the week to study? Would you be okay here alone?" "Alone?" Elizabeth laughed, looking at Argus, who had lain down between the two, as he always did. "I'll have the best security system in the world. And besides, it's time for you to fly with your own wings." Stella knelt beside Argus and stroked his head. "Thank you, boy, for everything. For showing me the truth, for protecting my family, for never giving up when everyone else had." The dog looked at her with his wise golden eyes, and Stella was certain he understood every word. "You know what I found out?" said Claire, observing the interaction. Argus was originally trained to find missing persons. When he retired from active service, the instructors said he had never failed on a mission. "And he didn't fail this time either," said Stella, laughing. "He found the most important person he could find, myself." The sun was setting over the eucalyptus hills, painting the sky in golden and rosy tones. Palmetto Farm, which for so many years had guarded dark secrets, now radiated peace and love. "Mom," said Stella, observing the landscape, "do you think Dad would be proud of us?" Elizabeth smiled, remembering the husband she had lost when Stella was still very young. "I'm sure he would. He always said our family had deep roots in this land, and that one day you would come home." "I am home," said Stella, holding her mother's hand. "I'm finally home." Argus stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, looking toward the horizon as if knowing that his most important mission had been accomplished. He had restored a family, revealed the truth, and protected the innocent. And on the quiet nights that followed, the residents of South Mill Creek often heard lullabies coming from Palmetto Farm, the voice of a mother who could finally sing to her daughter again, accompanied by the soft sound of a contented dog resting under the stars. Truth had triumphed, love had won, and Palmetto Farm had once again become a home where secrets were replaced by hope. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us which city you're watching from.